Hi guys, let's talk about chapter 4, lesson 4.4, which is called Parallel and Perpendicular Lines. So we're starting to get a little list of got to know things so far this chapter. So let's go over a few of them. The first one is that all of the equations that we have been talking about create lines. All of them have x, but not x squared or x to the third or x to the fourth. No exponents, just an x and a y or some other variables that substitute for those. And we have several forms that we can see these lines in. So the first form we learned about goes like this: y equals mx plus b. It is called slope-intercept form. It's called slope-intercept form because we can see the slope and the y-intercept. So if you just look at an equation that's in this form, you should be able to just look at it and tell me the slope and the y-intercept. So if I wrote an example of that, and I said, what is the slope of this line? You should be able to tell me that the slope is 3. And then I should be able to ask you what the y-intercept is, and you should tell me that that's 4. So that's a really cool and simple form of a line. We see things like that, and it's really useful. We can graph it really easily from that, and we can tell what our starting amount was. The y-intercept will be our starting amount. We can tell what the constant increase or decrease is. That's the slope. And so that's the first thing we learned that's really important. The second thing we learned that is necessary, not as handy, but definitely necessary, is that sometimes we see lines in this form. We'll have a number times x plus a number times y equals a number. And this is called standard form. To use this form, we often plug in a 0 for x and find out what the y-intercept is by solving for y, or we plug in a 0 for y and solve for x and find out what the x-intercept is. That's kind of useful, but you'll typically see that looking something like this. And I could ask you what A is, and you'd say 3, and what is B, you'd say 2, and what is C, you'd say 10. But they don't straight up tell us the slope or the y-intercept. Excuse me. The third thing we've learned about is another form of the line, and it goes like this: y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And in this case, well, let me tell you what it's called. It's called point slope form. And it's called point slope form because we can see a point. In this case, the point is x1, y1, those particular numbers right here and right here, disregarding the minuses in front of them, are a point that's on the line. One of infinitely many, but the x and the y particularly go together, and so they are valid numbers. The other thing that we can see is the slope. M is the slope, and that will be the same as you would see in slope-intercept form. You would see the slope. We see the slope in point slope form. An example of this might be something like this: y minus 3 equals 6 times x minus 2. And I would say in this case that the point is 2 and 3. Notice that I did not say negative 2 and negative 3, just 2 and 3. And the slope is 6. If you had this, then you would tell me that the point was at negative 2 and negative 3. So it's kind of opposite of what you might think. the slope in this case would still be 6, right? It could, if there was a negative there, it could be -6. You just read it straight out as the number you're looking at. All right, so that's a little bit of review. Today, there are 2 important things for you to take away. And then I'll show you how we're going to use those in order to solve some problems.